Hello, everybody. Today I have Mr. BT here with us. He works for a radio station and he works for a church. He's the worship man at the church, we guess we'll
Yeah.
call him. And his life is a lot about music. He's got 3 guitars right behind him, so
Mm.
fittingly right there, ready to go. Um, he's a brilliant male vocalist, actually. I've heard his craft, and we've had numerous chats about church culture kind of stuff over the last few months. So I'm excited to have a bit of a chat with him. How are you doing today, BT?
Yeah, doing well, thanks. Yeah, keen to chat. I like to talk music, so in any kind of shape or form. So this is exciting.
Really? So the topic was kind of music and culture, and I've definitely put a little bit of a church spin on the questions that I wanted to ask. And the first kind of the overarching theme, I guess, is do we feel like music is in itself got some spiritual power, or do we attach maybe more of a spiritual meaning to it than we should? Well, I'm not sure if that makes sense as a question, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think yes. I think music is spiritually powerful, but I'd say that because and it's trying to work out whether I'm saying that because I love music, right? And I see it, but I just think of all the important things of life and how connected music is to it. So like community and culture, like you look at those things not even through like a religious scope or anything like that, but you look throughout history, and it's fair to say that like all cultures used music in some way, shape, or form as part of continuing moving story forward. Like some has told stories, some worship, prayer, lament, encouragement. Like there's chants that people remember. Like a lot of history, singing has been used to remember things. Like bells and gongs and stuff to start and end key moments. I just think it's so connected to community that I guess I look at spiritually powerful things, and they're all pretty connected to something like community.
Yeah, 100%. I actually think that that's the like super powerful thing about worship for me is like something like we're all participating in something together as a community. Some of us better than others in terms of our skill level, but it's the like, what's the term? It's like the sum of our parts is, or the sum of the whole is greater than all the individual parts kind of working together. I think that's the beauty in it. It's very communal.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating because it's one of those things where you don't actually have to be very good and you can still play a part. Like I think vocally, you don't need to all sound great, and I think that's something that over time maybe we've lost, particularly in Western culture, perhaps as perfection and all those sorts of things kind of trickle into our lives and stuff. Like I think there's. I don't know. I just imagine it didn't always sound amazing. Like I think people just sang because that's what they do. Maybe that's all they knew what to do in a moment. Like I just think of so many things and so many moments. Like so many movies you watch, like in the battle scenes, like there's bagpipes going out before people. There's like music involved and stuff. Like I think of Titanic, and how they're playing music when the Titanic's going down. Like I just don't imagine culturally that like playing like shooting hoops or something would have meant the same to like the people. It's like, oh, you just kind of watch that. And I remember just being like, yeah, you just kind of accept that I guess music's something that goes down with the ship, like everyone else is getting off, but they stay. I just think that stuff's fascinating, and the power music has to me goes deeper than just that idea of something that's fun.
Agreed, very much so. That does lead me to one of the questions I was going to kind of frame, where music has this really powerful emotive, deep kind of emotive thing to it. For me, particularly, where so before a basketball game, I'll listen to it to get like hyped up, and at the gym, we listen to music when we're lifting heavy. There's something that we can tap
Yep.
into there it's like a deep resonation with your soul. I feel like I've cried more times in the last few months listening to music than I have about anything else, which is big for me. I'm very toxically masculine with that. So um, it's something really hits really deep when you listen to music. And I've often wondered, do you think that there's could you harness that like emotion or that motivation, that connection that we get from music Do you think that comes from where does that come from? And how do you think you can harness that? Do we sometimes harness that in churches, in sporting aspects?
Mm. Yeah, it's such a fascinating question. Like the idea, I guess, immediately is that thought of if we can harness anything, you're like, man, if I knew how to harness it, I'd write a book and make heaps of money kind of idea. But I think we do harness it way more than we think we do. I think age has a bit to do with it. Like I was thinking about this, and I think as I've gotten older, I think I've learned to appreciate the role that music can play. Uh, I think of the songs that get me emotional. I'm similar. Like in the last couple of years, music's gotten me. I don't even know if it's in a different way, but I think I've just let it in more. And as a little while ago, I was running, and I was on my final kilometer, and I'd been for a pretty long run, and I'd been running with friends the whole time. And it got to the final kilometer, and I just said, hey, for this last K, I'm just going to put my headphones in and I'm just going to run. I was struggling. I ran 35 Ks for my 35th birthday, and
Wait.
got to the final K, and I was like, I'm really struggling. I think if I'm going to get this done. So I whacked my headphones in, and the two songs that played were Purple Paint by Tommy Prine, which is just a singer-songwriter acoustic song, and Bright Lights by The Killers. And I just found myself getting hugely emotional while running to these songs that weren't particularly uplifting in a traditional sense, like Purple Paint, fantastic song. But it was more a song that had been important in my life kind of the 6 months before. And I just found myself at the end of this long run, I'm 35, this song that means a lot. And I got through it, and I actually ran a pretty decent final K. And it was funny because I was thinking about it afterwards. Like I had all these things going against me running this last K, but it was almost literally just the power of those two songs hitting me in an emotional way that very much got me through. And I think it's such a fascinating kind of idea that music plays on our body, our mind, our memories, and our emotions, maybe so much more than we allow it to. And maybe that's why I say as we get older, maybe we start to recognize that a bit more.
100%. And it is quite personal because so if I played those two songs, I probably wouldn't get a whole lot out of them, to be honest. I think there's something like, those particular songs, were they big for you growing up, like in adolescence? Were they around?
No, not
then?
at all. They're
No, not
songs
really.
that were released like in the previous 18 months. So they're like
Yeah,
new
yeah.
songs, and so it's just
There you go.
they're just songs that during that time I was listening to a lot, and stuff going on in life. But I think it does have to do with memory. And I think because you think about like maybe you think about the summer where you fell in love, and maybe the song wasn't like an upbeat bop. Maybe it was like Complicated by Avril Lavigne or something. But that song, that sad song that's a breakup song for someone else in your memory, is linked to this core happy moment. And then the kind of the theme of the song is largely irrelevant, the mood of the song and all those sorts of things. I think that's a fascinating, it's so much linked to our memory and our nostalgia of that moment as opposed to really what the song is. And I think there's, again, something interesting in that.
Really cool. Yeah, I like thinking because they're 100% linked to memories of different times. I remember so vividly I was in Singapore, and I used to have like you remember Discman, when it was like you'd have one CD? This is anyone who's over the age of 30 might know this. And I had one CD, and it was this Hybrid Theory album by Linkin Park, and I feel like every song on that CD was a banger. And it just like that. If I listen to that album again, it just brings me back to like being in Singapore on holiday. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's just there, isn't it? I think of, and I also wonder if there's a part of music in terms of harnessing memory and harnessing kind of like the rawness and the super kind of emotional side of that stuff. Like, I wonder if there's something in, we use music to help us escape, but I also think music is also at its most powerful when we use it and embrace it to process what we're going through. So instead of playing a song to help us escape from the breakup or whatever, like you're actually using it, and it ends up helping us process what we're going through. Like you want to stop feeling sad, so you listen to like Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan, or like A Midnight Organ Fight by Frightened Rabbit, or you listen, something super emotive. But it's more about the fact that it starts to help you process what you're feeling lyrically. Maybe those songs like, oh, that's something that I am going through, and I can resonate with that, as opposed to I want to escape and ignore all my problems. I think it's when it's harnessed powerfully, it's more like, oh, it's actually making me deal with what I'm going through a bit more than I wanted to.
Yep, like it can be 100% a form of meditation where you have to be present with the song in the moment with those lyrics a lot of the time, and we know that digesting, you need to look at those emotions to digest them. And we've talked a little bit about the Noah Kahan album that's come out recently. Great crying album if anyone wants to shed some tears. Like just like beautiful lyrics in there, poetry in there, and you just sit with these emotions and digest them, and it is a form of meditation, a form of release, and a form of burdens lifting for me sometimes listening to songs like that.
Yeah, and he's a fascinating one in that community side as well. Like you think of that first album, or not first, but the kind of the album that exploded in Stick Season. It's like nothing about a dude singing about Vermont should have resonated in theory with us over in Perth, but it was the story, and it was the fact that he was processing his grief and his pain and his feelings about being in what's perceived a small town, and everyone can kind of relate to those stories. It's like, that's how I felt. I've been there, and I think that's where music is more. I think we underestimate. Sometimes we think music's entertainment, and it's so much more than that. It really does control how we feel, and young me, and probably young you as well. Like we never really. Except I was like, nah, music doesn't affect my mood and what's going on in my day. And then you kind of get old and you're like, I was listening to a lot of Rage Against the Machine when I was 17. And maybe that's why I was just so angry all the time. Like,
makes sense. Well, shifting gears a little bit and thinking about like music in the church, and we've both grown up with a bit of that. And I was thinking a little bit about worship and how that is literally, if you wanted to look up in Spotify worship as a genre, you can look up the genre of worship, and how we have this whole section of songs that are in there. And I was wondering, do you feel like we've reduced, because worship is probably something that's supposed to be a little bit more of a posture towards God. We are in a worship posture. But I think if I said worship to anyone, not anyone, but most people, they would just think of singing songs in church. Do you think in some way that's detracted a little bit from the actual word of worship?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because whenever you when churches are preaching on worship, they're always quick to say, and it's not just music, like it's so much more than that. And I think we do know that, and I don't necessarily think we've lost anything by turning it into a genre, because I think that has been quite helpful. But I think unintentionally, maybe we've allowed a softening of something that is powerful, maybe given like ourselves permission to say, oh, it's just a song, or, kind of, I think we've allowed ourselves to do some of those things instead of really wrestling with what worship looks like holistically. So I think there have been some real positives about kind of making it a genre per se. In terms of, like we can jump on Spotify and find stuff, but I do think undoubtedly you just lose stuff in the moving forward of things. Everything in society seems to be based individually now, and I would probably move more towards that being the problem, or not problem, but the loss perhaps of understanding worship. I think in the fact that we live in this individualistic society where it's about me and how can I engage and how can I feel. So I can jump onto Spotify and listen to my favorite worship songs, and you can jump onto Spotify and listen to your favorite worship songs. And then what that brings when we get together in community is a bit of disunity, because I want to sing my songs and you want to sing your songs. And I think maybe that's a disappointing aspect of it, and a tough aspect of it as well, because it's fun to listen to what you want to listen to. But I do think individuality in its modern Western sense has probably hurt the posture of worship.
Yeah, I do. I've certainly experienced heading to a different church and listening to their songs and being like, oh man, I don't know any of these. I can't worship here. It does feel quite insular is probably not the word, like self-involved maybe in some ways. I often actually wonder, like, what is God up there thinking? Like, man, what are you guys all doing? Like singing? Maybe you should be going forward and on a Sunday morning and like doing some more stuff for me. What's the pragmatically?
Mm.
What's the function of worship? And do you think it's just a personal thing and that brings us to the posture? Do you think that as a collective, it's a good it's a strength to kind of posture in that way and have that as our front and center of our mind when we're thinking about like bigger things and God on a Sunday?
I think, and I'm happy to be completely wrong on this, but I just imagine we turn up to church in rows of 50, up to like thousands of people, and it seems so counterintuitive to me to then be insular there. And so we're gathered in collectively to look around and see all the different people who are worshiping with me and gathering with me on this Sunday or Wednesday or Saturday or whenever it might be. And to then kind of look inwards and go, all right, how can I, it's like, oh, I can do all of that in the car on my own. But now I'm in this moment where there's people who are here for a similar reason to me. And maybe I can get a personal revelation in that moment, but who am I then speaking to about that and being encouraged by? And I just think the collective gathering of worship is so much more about a communal event, an experience of Jesus and of what God has in store. And I think even when we read the Bible, right, so many times, particularly in the New Testament, where the word "you" it's not like, "Hey, you, Brendan." It's like you all. So it's like you should go and do. You all should. You all should. And I think we lose something really cool when we kind of move to that, like, oh, I need to be centered here. I need to. It's like, well, maybe the song's not in your key and you don't want to sing. So listen to other people sing and find joy and worship in that. Find joy in an old lady singing really loudly and like kind of like an operatic voice that maybe hasn't been like on trend for years, but enjoy them and how they're engaging with God and be like, wow, like that's the same God that I engage with when I sing, my favorite tune that's not being played this morning, or whatever it might be. I think there's so much more that we can do as we worship, and also prepare ourselves for different aspects of worship, right? So singing is one part, but singing with our mind on, all right, we're going to be praying together soon, or singing knowing that this is the life that I live, and right next to me is this person that lives a completely different life, and how can I help them this week? And what are these songs saying that make me go out and do something? And all those kind of things come together for me when I think of this.
Yeah, I like it. That's really cool. Like noticing the beauty in others and in the way that they're interacting with worship is actually a really cool thing to be thinking about. It's a community when we're at church. Is probably my favorite thing about being in a place with people who are all there for the same reason. It's very collective, and noticing how other people interact with that, a really cool idea. I think talking about noticing beauty, like one of the I play a few instruments and I really enjoy playing drums the most, because I feel like if I'm just locked in a song, and I think people call it like a flow state or something, where pretty much everything else will fade away. And almost every Sunday when I'm playing at church, I'll feel that at some point in there. And I'm often left wondering, is that part of the music? Am I there locked in? Because it also will happen if I'm playing a cover song. You just
Mm.
the rest of the world fades, and it's just this feeling of I'm here, present with this one skill that I'm doing, participating with other people, but I'm really locked in here. And then I've often been felt thinking, oh, is that I'm a bit like suspicious of looking for beauty in
Yeah.
that isn't like to do with Jesus and to do with Christian
Mm.
beauty, if that makes sense. Do you think that beauty belongs to the church or to God? Can we find it in other forms of music? And could that be a style of worship even?
Yeah. I think So I watched Cool Runnings with my kids the other night.
Oh, beautiful
Fantastic
movie.
film. But there's that moment where the Jamaican bobsled team have kind of landed, and all the bobsledding teams stop and look, and Yul Brynner says to them, they say, what's everyone looking at? And he says, Yul Brynner says, we're different, and people are always afraid of what's different. And I think there's so much trust involved in other people's things that they're doing, that I just think we're afraid of it. So, and I think that's so much of it, because it seems to show up way more in creativity in the church than it does in other aspects. And I wonder if it's more that we're just scared and afraid of God presenting himself differently through just a song that doesn't explicitly mention Jesus, or or because the song didn't have a certain synth sound. That's probably a bit harsh, but I think of stuff that I connect with and songs that I've connected with, and like we could name any song that's been important to us. Under Pressure I love Queen, so Under Pressure, like I hear that song and I hear the heart and the lyrics behind that song. Now, I'm not going to speak for David Bowie or Freddie Mercury and anything about their faith, but they didn't write that as a worship song. But I can hear the heart of that song, and I can see Jesus in the ideas of Under Pressure. Like life is hard, we're under pressure, and how do we actually step back from that and still try and excel and succeed? Like I think of, again, like you think of Cool Runnings, an all-time movie, probably not trying to write or create that movie with Christian kind of content or Jesus at the center of it, but I just see all of these scenes and all these moments in that movie, and I just see Jesus in those teachings. But that's like the worldview I'm coming from, and I'm not scared of that. Like it just doesn't bother me if I see Jesus in things that maybe aren't explicitly Christian. Do you feel similar? Like when you're listening, like I guess like guys like Noah Khan and stuff, because they're explicitly almost speaking not the opposite, but they're speaking about their negative experience per se, and you can still see it in there.
Yeah, 100%. I felt such a spiritual connection to that new Noah Khan album, and I actually just made a video about how Paramore and Hayley Williams in particular kind of shaped a lot of. I was kind of I sometimes just wonder if I project my experience onto other people, or if it's actually going along and I'm at like a similar place. But I feel like I was at like quite a similar place to her, reading into her lyrics of her spiritual journey, deconstructing and then reforming something. And she's not being overly explicit with the lyrics, but just I felt along with the journey, and I felt a real resonation. Like, this is a Jesus thing for me. This is a big spiritual thing for me as I'm listening to these songs. A really random one was Hunger Games. I think it was the second Hunger Games movie. I watched that and felt like so convicted about my I guess privilege, or that like how I've got a lot and a lot of people don't, and I just like got called back to heaps of stories of Jesus and helping people, and it was pretty basic. I was pretty young when it came out, but that was like a big spiritual experience for me, watching the Hunger Games, which is absolutely not a explicitly religious text at all. But I really feel like you can find a lot of meaning and a lot of God in things that are maybe not supposed to be.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. I think when we can kind of, and I don't necessarily think people go out to be scared of things. Like I do think there perhaps was a time in the church's history, like you think about like the Satanic Panic and sort of the kind of burn the CDs and all those sorts of things. And I just wonder about those moments, and I just go, I just don't think those artists were thinking about how can we rile up the church. I think maybe sometimes we give ourselves a bit of a complex where it's like, I don't actually think they're thinking about us all that much. I think they're just creating music or creating something that they think will resonate with people because it resonates with themselves. And ultimately, like we talked about before, like we feel connected to things that I think feel genuine. And sometimes perhaps that's one of the struggles I have with connecting with particularly CCM music outside of the worship world. I probably struggle to connect with some of the Christian pop, and I think we've seen a lot of stories of artists coming out and saying, you know, they haven't wanted to write this stuff for years, but they didn't feel a way out, and they also were trying to be creative and find ways to connect with people through those avenues. But I think when we lose curiosity and when we lose the idea to kind of think the best of maybe the situations, we kind of fall into that, oh, well, let's just cookie cutter create and let's just keep going forward.
What is CCM music? Sorry.
Contemporary Christian music.
Yep. All right. Right. Got it. I say like, oh man, did you experience like Switchfoot and Reliant K? Is that kind of what you'd say CCM
Yeah.
is? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so the fascinating thing about CCM is it's just CCM. So the poppiest of pop Christian music is lumped in with Switchfoot, and with like, even like to an extent, I imagine, as much as they wouldn't have liked it, like Under Oath are probably thrown under the, you say you're a Christian artist and you kind of get thrown into this world of like CCM, which is a fascinating, I don't know, enigma in itself, that all of these
Yeah.
different artists can get kind of formed into one when they're so different. But yeah, a hugely interesting conversation as well, just around how CCM looks and what the role that plays, and you know, I guess the goods and the highs and lows of that.
Mm. Yeah. I think I think I see merit in well, I totally understand why parents and leaders in churches would see music as part of the CCM universe and see that as safe, because there's people who've declared, we are Christian people, we're going to make, I guess, music that's not going to be harmful as far as they would be attempting to do so. And it is funny. It's a huge, yeah. There's probably the cynical side of me says, so there's probably they're tapping into a big market here. Where you go, as Switchfoot, you know, we're going to be massive in all the churches, and but there was a collective experience growing up with guys around me all listening to Switchfoot and all jamming to that stuff together. That was really cool as well, and really formative. Some beautiful lyrics in some of their songs.
Yeah, and I think the kind of Christian artist thing is really fascinating, and I think we have maybe swung back the other way of being ultra cautious of it, and quite cynical of it. I know that I find myself in that kind of landscape of kind of thinking the worst before I think the best, and I think there's a number of reasons for that, but there's also some incredible kind of Christian artists, Christian rock artists, Christian kind of indie artists doing some amazing things and really writing really thoughtfully about um, perhaps what faith looks like really, what the challenges are really. Unfortunately, the reality is they're not going to play on the radio for the same reason that the kind of secular artists who are doing similar things probably aren't going to play on the radio, you know, because the radio is trying to do one thing, or Spotify top charts are trying to do one thing. But there are some fascinating artists in the Christian world really writing, and you're like, oh, again, if you didn't know, you'd be like, is this Christian? But then you listen, you're like, oh, this is coming from a profound place and a real honesty to wrestle with their own lives about maybe, you know, wrestles they had or decisions they made or conversations or words they didn't say well. And I think that's the stuff I'm drawn to when I listen to anyone. I'm drawn to a story. I love Paul Kelly for that reason. I love Bob Dylan. Like, I love a story and recognizing that people can change. And I think that stuff's cool.
Yeah, that's good. If you had to kind of think about the church's relationship with music and the church's relationship with worship, and if you were, let's say you were, I asked this question and that's why I kind of like it. If you were some sort of advisor to all the big worship guys who are going to make some massive decisions for all of, like capital C, the church, about worship and about music, and you are going to say, how can we change our relationship with music, if you think it does need to be changed at all? What would be like, would you have some tips, or would you have a few pointers for them?
Um, Uh, I think a lot of my thoughts would go more to the localized smaller church and say how could you do some well that's probably not true. I think one of the things I'd say holistically as capital C church would be I do think we need to reclaim uh creativity in the arts. Like I think um you just look throughout, go to churches that have any kind of like one in front of them or an 18th, 16th, like these old churches are filled with incredible art, incredible stained glass uh, creations, stations of the cross put into them. And there was this real, like, grab hold of art and creativity. And we talk about that beauty, and does the church own the like beauty? I think for a while the church was kind of like the pinnacle, certainly in certain points of history of like we get beauty, we get art, we get really giving our best. And I think in pursuit of perfection and in pursuit of cooker cookie cutter even, I think we've kind of lost what creativity and art is. And I think I say that very lightly because I'm not saying I'm not the artist who understands, but I do think that we have lost that. And I think the only way we're going to go is even worse in the age of AI, where, now churches can just get AI to create stuff for them. They don't need to ask their parishioners. They don't need to ask their members. They don't need to ask their young people. They don't need to ask their old people. Hey, who likes to draw? Who likes to create? Who likes to make something? Can we make that? So I think that would be the first thing I'd try and grab hold of, is this idea of like, let's really embrace and engage creative people in the church.
Yeah, we've certainly kind of, I don't know if it's a fear that's held that back a little bit, or maybe that's the wrong term. Like let it go, I guess. And it's kind of siloed off a little bit now. Like we have our genre of art, and here's the world genre of art. It'd be really cool to be a bit more creative in that space. I agree.
Yeah, and again, historically, you look at it, and Christians were in everything. They were the brightest philosophical minds. They were the brightest scientific minds. They were the brightest creative minds. They were the brightest. Like they were the people who were reaching out and imagining big and dreaming big. And I think in the safety of, this is what church should look like, and this is what church can look like. And now we are kind of the power. We can make the moves, and I don't say that in a mean way. I think it's great that the message of Jesus is well known and well understood. But I think we have lost some of that. Maybe that DIY-ness. Certainly, you'd look at maybe a bunch of the old school cathedrals, and you'd push back against DIY ideas. But yeah, that kind of, let's just give it a go and see what happens sort of stuff. I think that's cool.
Mm. Yeah, it is probably. I think that the message was always supposed to be spread, but there's something lost when it is the mainstream. I guess it was always quite underground. The church was pretty underground when Jesus was around.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think the other thing I'd love to see for the church's relationship with music, if I was to build from the ground up, I'd love to see local churches writing the music for the context they're in. I think, like I said before, I think it's amazing that the worship genre has gotten out. And like I was thinking about like Oh Holy Night, right? If the music industry, like the Christian music industry, doesn't become a thing, even back then, that song stays in France in a little community and they sing it, and it doesn't, like Amazing Grace. You think of a bunch of these cool songs. I can't imagine Christmas without Oh Holy Night. So I think there's some great things about great songs that everyone sings, but also I think it'd be fascinating to see what it'd be like if local churches were writing their own songs for the context they found themselves in. And I say that as someone who has tried to write in that context before and gone, oh, there's already a song like this, so I'll just use their version. But, and that's probably, I guess that's true to an extent, but I think deeper than that is I know what's going on in the community. I know what's going on in the church. I know the people around. I know the themes we're struggling with. And I just wonder what it'd be like if local churches were writing songs for those people to sing, how much more they could grasp and grab hold of those lyrics as opposed to ones that are still fantastic, but were not written for the local churches in Perth or in Melbourne or like in Johannesburg or in London or wherever it is. Like, that's something I'd love to see kind of like teased out a bit. What does it look like? And not for any other reason than doing it. Not to be a big hit, not to be put onto Spotify so other people can sing your songs. I think that'd be something cool, and just being like, why don't we try write a song for our church? Because this is what we're going through.
Just being a bit creative. Do you ever modify songs, lyrics? Like, I mean, I'm sure you repeat the bridge 50 times sometimes. That's pretty standard. And on that note, actually, I feel like I always joke with my mates, we hacked All Holy Night, and we have the structure that is like, this song gets just the right amount of bridges back into pre-choruses. I'll show you one day. But yeah, do you ever like modify songs that are already there, like a little bit?
I like to mesh songs together. So I love grabbing an old chorus or an old kind of like, even like a scripture and song kind of, the kind of those, and just grab one of them that's in the right key and chuck them in. Probably the only lyrical change that I'll make to songs is I'll change my's and I's to we and ours. Again, that idea of singing in a group of people, me and I, is strange. So wherever I can, where it makes sense, or I think that us and our really changes the vibe of a song. Like, our God, you are our, like, not my, like our collective. Like, I think that's really powerful.
Agreed. That is really powerful and really cool. I'm going to be recommending that to people I know as well. Oh, well, BT, it's been brilliant, mate. Maybe to kind of sign off, can you think of any last recommendations for anyone? Maybe it's a person who's an artist that's shaped your faith or shaped your spiritual journey, Christian or not.
Yeah.
If you said, hey, go listen to this person, to someone, while we're on this topic of music, any last kind of thoughts there?
I'd say go listen to Sigh No More by Mumford & Sons. Just a fantastic album of someone wrestling with faith in amongst life, and not necessarily the answer that you might want, but I think that's great. That was really influential to me. I remember saying that to someone expecting me to give a worship album, and they were quite surprised. But that was quite influential, and probably more recently some music I've really been enjoying is from Mission House, for one. They're a great worship team. And Porter's Gate, where they're singing songs that lament. There's songs of heartache. There's songs that sound like the Psalms. Just stuff that you don't really contextually get to sing in church that often. Songs without answers. Songs that aren't just saying, "God, you're the best and my life's fantastic." But they've been really interesting for me over the last 2 or 3 years, just kind of engaging with songs written in communities for what those communities might be going through.
Love that. Hey, thanks so much for spending the time with us, mate. First of many, I hope. First of many chats.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been good fun.